What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is episode 43 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. You know, we've had a couple people on here who have been, physical fitness guys. We had Mark, who was with LAPD. We had Jeff, he's a teacher who was that guy who makes sure that he wants to work out because he's combating his diabetes, and then he passes it on to his kids at school, and not the diabetes, but working out, the whole desire to do that. And we've had several people on here. I've had Tony Mendonça on here, who is the director for an entire karate federation. And all these guys have always talked about fitness and always talked about getting healthy and doing things that they should do that have been things that drive them to be better and know that will help their longevity in life and help them do the things they need to do. With that being said, you know, we as first responders, as nurses, as teachers, as veterans, we don't even sometimes think about our health. We don't think about things that we need to know to make sure we're better and that we do things that we need to do. We go to work. Some of us work graveyard. We'll stay up late at night. We try to keep going on caffeine and whatever junk's laying around the office or whatever, and then maybe stop by and get a hamburger on the way and keep going because our job and the need for us is it doesn't stop. So we kind of have to take our health and everything else, including in that, and kind of put it in the back seat, right? But we don't realize how detrimental that is to us as we go through life and as we get older, when we retire, when we do all these things, and where things are going to go with us when we get to that age where either maybe our bone density kind of wanes, you know, with osteoporosis or something, or we start getting bad knees, or we have bad backs, or we have all these different things that we can combat at a younger age that we don't necessarily. Well, I want to talk about that today. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. And I've got somebody on the show who is actually probably smarter than several of my guests. And a lot of my guests will actually admit, yeah, it probably is smarter than me. But I guarantee he's smarter than me. But he's been called the Tony Stark of the fitness industry, which is kind of goofy, right? But once we get into it, you'll see why he's called that. He's an author, he's an inventor, he's a scientist. He's invented an entire workout system based around a piece of equipment that you can carry with you in the backseat of your car, and you can always have it with you. You know, there's so much that this guy has done, and a lot of the things that he's done was because there were things that came up in his life that said, you need to do this. And mostly there was one specifically for the health of his own mother, right? So he does all these things and says, I'm going to start developing this and researching this stuff so I can get into it. And all of that makes it fascinating. And the fact that he loves and he wants to advance health and fitness and everything else and longevity for first responders and veterans. And it's just amazing. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Dr. John Jaquish to the show. So, Doctor, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. That was a very detailed introduction. I love it.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You got to do a little reading on somebody before they come on the show, or at least know who they are, right? So, yeah. It's amazing all the stuff that you've put in there, and you're not that old of a guy, so you've got a lot of life left to do a lot of researching and
I'm probably younger than I look. I'm 45.
Oh, see, that's no problem. we're both 45, but you're
There we
still
go.
smarter than I am. So
When you're like trying to say who I'm smarter than, I'm like, I don't know. We should be doing comparisons.
right.
Well,
I don't know. I know a lot of folks
like,
on here who would say, yeah, that guy's smarter than me. Yeah, I'll tell you what, they
whenever, so inventing stuff is strange in that a lot of people, when you invent something and it works and people like it, obviously there's some business rewards and financial rewards do that. And it's interesting. When you're successful, almost no one is happy for you. There's a few who, understand your struggle and they're just pleased that you're doing great. Most people, not so much. In fact, look at how Elon Musk is treated on social media. Most people just hate the guy. He's like,
right.
Well, why? Because he's successful? Yeah, actually, that's why. So, I get that, but also like being the face of my brand.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to launch a company. If you want to avoid criticism, launch a company that has no spokesperson. You just have a corporate message.
Right. Yeah.
Except people follow people. People don't follow brands. Like, look at the popularity that Apple gained because of Steve Jobs. Yeah. Now that he's not there, now they're already the most popular consumer electronics company, but like the viewership of some of their keynotes, it's
true.
Yeah, nominal compared to when Steve Jobs was there.
Right.
Because Jobs was just, like a really dynamic inventor guy who was just kind of breathtaking to listen to, because really he didn't listen to anyone. Mm-hmm. He just developed what he thought would be a cool thing to have. And just so happened the guy was right every time.
Right.
There's a couple of things he worked on that weren't, super successful, or the world wasn't ready for. Like the iPad was developed before the iPhone.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. But he's I didn't know that. He just decided, he put it in a vault for 10 years because it was like, I can't get anyone to subscribe to this because it's too weird of a computer. But if I package it in a phone and people get used to that interface, well, then that'll just be another computer to them.
Right.
Yeah. So he had to have a couple years of iPhone before the iPad could.
Oh, that's pretty. I didn't know that. That's but you have to start thinking about that person that they follow people. You look at I don't know, let's take Jocko Willing, for instance. That gets in my head right away. His face is on everything. People follow him. If they just said, hey, follow the book, Extreme Ownership or whatever, people would, okay, yeah, I read the book. I put it down and I'm done and I'm moving on. No, get to know all his stuff that he does with it. And it's, absolutely.
Right.
Totally makes sense.
And he's also, he's not, Jocko's selling a lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not about a book or a supplement or a particular product. He doesn't sell alarm clocks. It's despite getting up very early every morning and letting everybody know he's up early every morning.
Right.
So Jocko's lifestyle, and he's a great marketing example, because that lifestyle he's selling is like I'm not going to be messed with, and I'm also going to outwork you.
Right. Yeah.
In almost any environment, a guy like that will be loved.
Oh,
it doesn't matter if you have that attitude, if you live that lifestyle, I don't care where the hell you work, you're going to be one of the most valuable people there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It delivers value. It's just, you're supposed to deliver 10 points of value. You deliver 20 every day.
Right. Yeah.
You'll be running the place soon enough.
Right. It's that don't be mediocre and just be more than mediocre. You don't have to be the number one, but if you're in that top 5%,
sure,
you're going to be. Yeah. So who is John Jaquish? Where did he come from? Who was little Johnny growing up?
So I grew up in the suburbs of San Francisco and spent my younger adult years in San Francisco, and that used to be a cool place. I call it the People's Republic of San Francisco now, because it is, as our past president would say, a shithole country. It really is. It's awful. I mean, and like, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. Four of my buddies are FBI agents that are in the San Francisco office. So they observe San Francisco, but San Francisco isn't really their jurisdiction.
Right.
So they're looking at, California from a counterterrorism standpoint, from fraud, bank robbery. These guys have been working in a lot of the federal crimes. You rob a bank that's FDIC insured, it's federal crime. Right. So that crime is to be investigated by federal law enforcement or the FBI. So a lot of interesting stories, but the exception to logic and reason is always the city of San Francisco. Okay. Because, and so I have another, a really good friend who I brought into my charity group, but I've known him since we were 18, because I recruited him into my fraternity also. So he's a fraternity brother, and we're in this charity group together. And so we've been friends for a long time, and he's a homicide detective. And I won't give the details, but like most of the homicides, he's not allowed to investigate.
Really?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Can't touch it. Some political reason.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, okay. Like, hey, there's, so-and-so has been accused of this, and like, we haven't, done any, it's like, oh, no, don't investigate that.
Wow. See, that's just so crazy. And
I'm not talking about corrupt politicians. I'm talking, the person's whatever, the wrong color or whatever.
Sure. Okay.
And, the department doesn't want to be accused of harassment or anything like that. So they just don't investigate it.
Wow.
Also, the city district attorney, I don't know if you're following this nightmare, but this guy just really doesn't want to prosecute anyone. Kind of glorifies criminality.
Yeah.
So and you've heard about it.
Oh, you bet. And you see people getting out on they get arrested or whatever, and there's no charges filed on them, and yet they did something incredibly heinous or whatever. Yeah,
like felony. They committed a felony and they just get let out. Yeah. So I got tired of it. You should, if you live in the city of San Francisco now, you should expect your car to be broken into on a regular basis.
And back then, when you were a kid growing up down there in the 80s, that it wasn't like that, I'm guessing.
Not at all. It was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to take, when I was younger than 10. I mean, it might have been like 8, 9. I remember I would take the subway system from the suburbs where I live. And I'd get my buddies, and we'd all, park our bikes. It's called the BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit.
Right.
So we'd get on BART and we'd go into Chinatown in the middle of the city from the suburbs.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're all like 9, 10 years old, right? Like, no one even questioned the fact that we were traveling alone.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, no one. I mean, there was police, and we'd be like, hey, and they'd just wave back. Like, no big deal. Just a bunch of 9-year-olds by themselves. And we go to Chinatown to get like the really crazy fireworks.
Right. Yeah.
Like the M100s.
Sure. Yeah.
Quarter stick of dynamite kind of thing. Because, like, it was always easy to find like the sparklers and the things that make bright colors, what they call safe and sane fireworks.
Right. You want the stuff that's going to blow up a mailbox. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want the unsafe and insane ones.
Right.
As everybody did.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want a sparkler. Like, what, what's going to, like, what can we put in a trash can where it'll actually like bust the trash can apart?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. So,
so you go into, I remember going to Chinatown down in San Francisco. This was back in 2009, maybe 10. And I was with my wife, and I had my kids, I had my uncle, I had my cousins with us. We went as a group, and you didn't consider going down there with by yourself, or especially as I wouldn't have had my kids going down there at 9 years old. Man, that's But in the 80s, early mid 80s, it's a totally different world. Totally different. So
when I was in undergrad, we used to just drive into Mexico all the time. Buy fireworks, and when you're over 18, you can drink down there, and like, whatever. That was our vacation spot. Baja.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, when
We don't
when
do
I
that
was
now.
when I was in the Marines, we would do the same thing. From
Right.
Camp Pendleton, you go down to Tijuana for the weekend,
Yep.
and it was just a totally different world, you know. I mean, I don't know, but so you go into school and you start growing up and you start figuring out what you want to do. You know, you play ball and
Yeah,
stuff in
yeah. I
school.
mean, ultimately, like my father, he's an engineer and a scientist. He worked for Defense Research Laboratories, which was a weapons contractor underneath General Motors.
Mhm.
Like they want to get out of the weapons business. And in fact, they weren't really in it per se. Like his project was the lunar roving vehicle.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah. So the car on the moon. Yeah. My father worked on that. And him and 8 other guys. And that was it. That was the whole team. And then there was they had a $1 billion budget.
I've got that. No, I don't have that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's
and
kind of crazy, but it was at a time where General Motors knew if they got a car on the moon
yeah.
and it worked,
Uh-huh.
that they could brag about that forever.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it didn't work, nobody at NASA was allowed to say it was General Motors. Because that's the last thing they wanted was
Sure.
like, oh, of course, a GM.
That was a Yugo. I'm
Yeah,
sure it was.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it became public knowledge after all 3 roving vehicles worked.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and you can see them through telescopes. And actually, their batteries all blew up a couple years ago.
Oh, really? Up there on the moon?
On the moon, yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
left them up there. Yeah. Wow, that's
Well, I mean, there was no mechanism for taking them home.
no. Yeah.
But yeah,
they
the
just
batteries
dropped them.
exploded, and like over a certain amount of time, a battery will do that.
Wow,
And,
I didn't realize that.
because there's no wind up there, there's no atmosphere.
Uh-huh.
Like you can actually see the blast mark, off the side of the roving vehicle.
Wow. And I'll have to look that up. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So did you play ball? You play sports and stuff in school?
Yeah, high school wrestling, swimming, and track. And then when I went to undergrad, rugby.
Oh.
Yeah.
And did you know you wanted to be a doctor? Did you have ideas of wanting to do something else or?
Yeah, I wanted to go pre-med. My father wouldn't pay for it. And I'm like, all right, well, what will you pay for? And he goes, business.
Uh-huh.
And because what he told me was everything scientific comes so easy to you. Like math came so easy to me.
Mm-hmm.
All science classes were just like most people were frustrated by chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did projects in chemistry, that took people a semester. I did it in like an hour.
Wow.
People were like, I was like, is this it? Like, I show the teacher, like, did I accomplish this objective? And he's like, yeah, it was a semester's worth of work. You did it like sitting in the back of the room just now.
Yeah.
But all right. Yeah. Like, so you're passing. Yeah. So like, the science stuff was always easy for me. It was the other stuff. Like, I didn't like English class. I didn't like it when somebody could just sort of give me their opinion. And then that was like the basis of the grade.
Oh,
like,
right.
What? Opinion.
Right.
Like, you didn't like the way I worded something or the subject of my essay. I was just like, what? Like, who cares?
Right. And there's no value to it. There's no, I guess, tangible end state that you can base something off of.
It's just a different thought process. My fiance loves to write.
Yeah.
And she's a very good writer. But to me, it was more like, it was just, writing was a mechanism of explaining a scientific process. Always.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like when I did my PhD, it was like, all I really wanted to do was really perfect the skill of academic authorship.
Oh, okay.
And it's funny because when you publish a paper, a lot of times it's acronym heavy. And like you read any scientific paper and there's statistical tests that nobody's ever heard of, but they might be the right one for showing the differences of one data set versus another data set or something like that. And the better I got at academic writing, the more I realized that while that's important, what will ultimately be even more important is being able to convey the power of these messages to everyone, right, or at least to a large portion of the population. I mean, like, let's face it, like, I think it's like 18% of America can't read at all or has to like sound out the words. They're functionally illiterate. So, I
I
mean,
didn't know it was that high. Now,
I read that statistic somewhere. I mean, that might be wrong. It might be
no, I mean,
12%.
I guess it could make sense. I didn't know. I honestly, I didn't have a
Yeah,
number to go.
I think it was reading past the 6th grade level.
Oh, wow. Oh, so like, yeah, okay. So like you said, was the sounding out the word. So you're reading much slower and sounding it out to where now you're trying to sound it out. And then you have to go back and then realize the definition of each word. And as you're going through. And so you're the comprehension is.
Yeah, being able to communicate with a broader population while still being accurate, because there's an expression I use, oversimplification is another word for wrong.
Right.
Like
okay.
If you've oversimplified you've gone over. Like it's so simplistic, it's just incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I see that most fitness information that's readily available, when you do like a Google search, you find some guru's website or whatever. It's just like all there is oversimplification, and also all there is wrong. Like, let me give you an example. Probably the worst thing to do for body fat loss is cardiovascular exercise.
Okay. Yeah.
Chronic cardiovascular exercise upregulates cortisol. Cortisol does 2 things. It gets rid of muscle, it cannibalizes muscle, and protects your body fat. So you stay as fat as possible, as long as possible. So it's basically doing 2 things that are the exact opposite of what anybody wants. Yeah. You walk into any gym at any time, and the most used equipment will probably be the room full of treadmills.
Yeah, that or the elliptical or something similar to that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter like what cardio equipment you're using.
Right.
It's not effective. It's giving them the opposite of what they think they're getting. And you tell people this and they're like, well, but that's not what anyone else thinks. I'm like, well, first of all, thinks, like you're talking about opinions. There's 40 years of research supporting what I'm saying.
Right. I had a friend who was
known by scientists for 40 years.
Yeah. I had a friend who was avid bicyclist. I mean, he biked, I don't know, miles and miles a day. And we had another friend, we were talking about him. He goes, how come he's, if he bikes so much, he's always doing, I see him riding around all the time, sweating and all this different stuff. But he's chubby. He's as chubby as I said, because, and I agree with you, and I didn't know the full science of it. I haven't read the studies like you did, but I had that understanding that cardio's, it's good. It helps you get your blood flowing, and you want to make sure you have something, oxygen going in your lungs, so you're moving those. But if you rely solely on that, you're not doing anything, because muscles need to work too. Now, I bet you that the bike guy, his legs are solid. His quads and stuff are solid, but that doesn't translate
Probably
to the
not,
rest of it.
Actually, because it's not enough force to actually recruit enough muscle to show the central nervous system that there's a deficit in the amount of tissue or in the fuel systems within the musculature. There's 2 different types of muscle growth. There's sarcoplasmic and myofibril growth. And one has to do with the density of the tissue. The other one has to do with the fuel that gets stored within the cells. You're really doing neither when you're doing cardio. Cardio is really like, there's actually no such thing as cardiovascular exercise. Like, I think people think that their body has like a switch, and it's like, oh, we're doing strength training, and it switches into strength mode, and then you stimulate strength, and you go into cardio mode and you stimulate cardiovascular endurance. No. Body doesn't have any idea that there is a difference between those 2. If you got to look at strength training, takes musculature to fatigue most of the time, to some degree, in both regards, sarcoplasmic and myofibril. And there will be a growth stimulus provided you have the proper amount of protein. Protein is all that counts, by the way. Anybody that tells you need calories to grow muscle, guy's a fucking retard.
Okay.
Wrong. It's only protein. That's all that matters. In fact, I have been, so I used to be kind of a chubby guy, but when I started this X3, I shouldn't say when I started the company, because I started the company years and years before. But we were licensing the intellectual property of the bone density devices to OsteoStrong. That was our business model. Launching our own fitness thing wasn't what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to be the representative, because I wasn't even in shape. But I was like, well, I know how this works. And so it'll certainly work for me like everyone else. And I had never been in shape, really. I mean, yeah, when I played college rugby, I was in shape, but if I put a shirt on, you'd never know it.
Right.
Like I was
So-
just like a regular guy.
So it's that thing where it's as a 19, 20, 21-year-old, your metabolism's fantastic. You're in better shape than you're probably ever going to be in the rest of your life. And you can do a lot of things. And I just talked about this with a couple other guests previously. And, we're smart, or we think we know everything at that age. We don't, but we don't, on the other side of it, we don't realize the health that we're in because our body is burning at such a high rate.
Right.
That we're able to overcompensate for ourselves and our shortcomings. And then when we get older, we forget about that. So there's that side of it where you don't realize. That's why you have all those young guys in the military or whatever, being able to just have that. They'll be able to go miles carrying a big old rucksack, and their knees aren't killing. You get a couple 40-year-olds doing the same thing, and they're going to stop their back.
Tell you the truth, the reason the 40-year-olds have sore knees chronically is because of those rucksack runs.
That's true.
Sorry, but yeah, I mean, like a lot of lifting, moving, let's say just any weighted materials, if not done perfectly, will create some level of chronic damage. And I mean, like Marines in their pack runs. Yeah. Like I don't know many Marines that have, knees that give them zero pain.
That's true.
Yeah. I know a lot of them that have pain in their knees every day. Yeah. And I mean, but hey, look, I mean, the point of the military isn't to get people in shape.
No, it's to go win wars.
It's to go win wars. Well, now if you tune in, it's about inclusivity.
And diversity and
it's about a whole bunch of shit that's not going to win a war.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to hear about like the war that never happened, because they were like, well, we were going to fight these guys, but then we saw what kind of diversity they had, and we were like,
right,
we'll just surrender.
Yeah, I read a thing the other day that said that they're now going to start including and allowing gender swap. The VA or the military is going to pay for that. These guys, they can't get stuff for their backs. They can't get stuff for their PTSD. They can't get stuff for their waiting in line years.
We're going to spend a couple $100,000 to help somebody transition.
Right. It's like, come on, how are we going to win a war with this? That's our job. That's our job, is to go win the wars and fight and keep our country.
The tragic thing is other countries who would potentially be aggressive with their neighbors, not necessarily us.
Yeah.
But like,
Syria
or like, let's say China invading Taiwan.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
They want Taiwan back. They don't think Taiwan is its own country.
Right. They think they own it.
They think it's theirs.
Yeah.
And they can create that argument. Like it was Chinese people that populated that island. In fact, it was a royal family from back in the day who basically fled China and all settled in Taiwan, and they created their own country there. Mm-hmm. No one was there, and they declared it their own country. It was recognized by the United Nations, and now China's like, yeah, it was never yours. It's ours. Right. So
yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
If they didn't have, the way that Hong Kong was, they had England backing it up and saying, no, it's ours. And there was an understanding. Okay, but in this day, we're going to get it back. And Hong Kong still says
set up though, because Hong Kong was leased to the United Kingdom for 100 years.
Right. And there was that,
China was making money.
There was that end date that they knew they were going to be coming back.
Also, they knew they were going to get it back. And they knew it was not theirs to even give an opinion about until they got it back.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Same thing with Macau. Macau is the same. And it's one of my favorite places in the world. I love Macau.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was leased to Portugal for 100 years. And it's like their gambling place. It's
you're right. I have read that Macau was known for its casinos and stuff like that.
Yeah, very weird though. So there's no swimming pools anywhere, because you go to Vegas and everybody wants to go to the big beautiful pool. They have what? They don't do anything.
Weird.
No. Yeah, the Wynn Hotel in Macau. I don't even think it has a swimming pool at all.
Wow, and they go to the hotel, they go to eat, and then they go to gamble, and they go
like
back to
bars, nightclubs, almost impossible to find. Like,
really.
But if you're gambling, they just bring you free drinks.
Yeah.
So it's really all about the gambling.
Wow.
So it's not like Vegas at all.
That's
But
crazy. I didn't know that.
They do have good restaurants, so I'm pretty happy about that.
That's good. So we've hit a couple topics, but I want to kind of, we got to kind of develop how these things come about. So you go to school for your PhD in business, right? Is that correct?
No, my PhD was in biomedical engineering.
Okay, but your
I
dad
got my
was
MBA first, yeah. So I got my master's in business, and then I did, and like he paid for my MBA, and then when it came to my PhD, I got a scholarship. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And so then you go into that knowing that that's what you want to do because it comes fairly easy to you or whatever. But
Yeah.
then, but you still got to work for it. It's not everything's easy. You still got to bust your hump to get the things you need to get done.
Anything worthwhile is not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you go into, at what point, and you graduate and you're in a practice at this point, correct? What did you do right after college?
So PhD is research. They don't practice medicine.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to research my own invention. So like before I started the PhD, I had developed the bone density devices.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew to launch them, like I really had to have the ability to write academically, and I needed their credential. So it was pretty much just like, any school that was willing to let me study my own invention. Surprisingly enough, not many will allow you to do that. They want to impose a project on you,
Right. Okay.
that you have no interest in at all. Which is just boring as hell. Like, why would I want to do that? It seems like a waste of 6 years.
Right. Especially when you have something sitting in the back of your brain saying that this needs to be studied. This needs to be researched. This needs to be.
Right. So, yeah. And so that was kind of the objective of the PhD. And it went well.
And was that, now your mom got osteoporosis at a certain point, right? That really catapulted.
Got me to research bone density. What got me to develop the OsteoStrong devices. And we have 150 clinics around the world with OsteoStrong. That's the name of it, OsteoStrong. And we're in 10 different countries. And
so what did it do for your mom that helped you determine that this thing was going to be beneficial for other people? I mean, did she get healed from it, or what happened?
Yeah, her bone density went back to the level it would be at 30 years of age, and she was in her 70s at the time.
Wow! And what was it?
Bone density. Well, she was lower than 2.5 standard deviations to the negative.
Okay.
Off of what's normally a 30-year-old of her gender and her race. So different races of people have different bone density levels. So we try and normalize it, like you want to be at this level. This is normal for a person of your gender and race, or this is below average or above average. So my goal was to get her back to average, which is the 30-year-old level.
At 70 years old, right? That we said?
Yeah. And OsteoStrong locations are doing that every day.
And so, yeah, you don't hear about osteoporosis too much anymore. I mean, I guess it's still a thing.
It's a shame. Like, it ends as many lives as breast cancer.
Really?
It's just not as dramatic, because what happens is, somebody breaks a hip, they go to the hospital, there's complications from the fracture, and then they die of pneumonia. Like, there's a 50% chance of death from an osteoporotic fracture over the age of 50 within 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. Holy cow.
50 is not that old.
No, that's 5 years away from you and I.
Yeah.
And you're looking at, I mean, I don't plan on breaking a hip, at least I don't want to. And I know people that are, they're working hard jobs, and they're in their mid 50s, and they could lose everything because they work hard jobs. It's not.
Yeah. They could lose their lives.
Yeah. And, just on this basic thing. Now, does that mean with that, that's something that you guys are able to help I guess, mitigate in people as they get older and stuff like that? And
so, yeah, we can reverse the bone loss. Now, it doesn't work. Like, it has to do with your effort. Like, how much bone compression you can create is what will trigger the bone density to come back. So, like, there's some people who go to use it and just don't try. Now, does it work for them? No. Might as well just sit on the couch.
Right.
But you can say the same about any physical medicine intervention. If you go to physical therapy and, after having a shoulder replacement and your therapist is telling you to do full outward rotation and you're kind of going here instead of here, well, you're going to lose mobility in your shoulder and that'll be permanent. So your new replaced joint will work like shit forever. Yeah. But, some people they just can't be bothered. They're just too lazy. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, you're right. It is a shame that, you it's like laying something out. Hey, you can use any of these tools here and just to go build that. And you say, well, I'm just going to use this hammer and this nail. Well, you got to cut the wood first.
Or nothing, where you just sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the so osteostrong works very well. Now, some people do have some biochemical differences. Like if you have a thyroid dysfunction, it's not going to work well for you, but you will find that you have a thyroid dysfunction.
Yeah.
Once you find that and you treat that, then you can grow bone density. Right. So those are some of the caveats. Like nothing out there medically is for everyone. There's always complications and different cases and other, co-founding variables that could influence the outcomes. So, but this whole adventure brought me to what really helps out law enforcement and first responders the most, which was the invention of X3, which is like, the greatest strength training device ever. And like you said, it fits in a backpack or in a drawer or in the back seat of your car, in the trunk of your car. I keep one in the trunk of my car, and my car's a Lamborghini, by the way. So it's a tiny ass trunk.
Yeah. You barely get groceries in there.
Ever imagine. Yeah. I mean, like it's like hard luggage. I don't care how small your suitcase is, it won't go in there.
Yeah.
But the X3 won't.
And that's cool. So what exactly, was with the osteoporosis, with all the stuff working towards bone density and everything, did that lead you to develop the X3? Yeah. Is it, so what exactly is the X3? So for people that maybe don't understand.
This is the most important part of the X3. So it's a bar, but it's an Olympic bar. So I can rotate it. And you see, as I'm rotating it, you see how this stays parallel to the ground.
Okay. Right, a little hook that says,
Yeah. And so like it's made so that you're neutral loading of the wrist. So you're putting the loading down the radius and ulna of the wrist. So you're never like this. You're never like this.
Not bending that wrist. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the ultimate comfort in the wrist, and really like the Olympic bar is probably one of the only smart things in fitness that's ever really been a thing.
Yeah.
Some of the machines that come out, it's like, they seem beneficial, but you could also illustrate how like they'll never trigger a growth hormone event. Just don't. It's because there's no stabilization involved with the recruitment of muscle.
Yeah. The first one I think of is that adductor machine where you sit there and you spread your legs, and those stupid things, these people just doing them wrong or whatever, not the way they're intended, and they're just all over the place.
I could see like a bodybuilder trying to make everything pop out, like getting some benefit out of that, but there's no like health or function benefit. Like you'll never see an NFL player on one of those.
Right. Yeah. A full athlete, an active, usable athlete. Now, like you said, a bodybuilder, they're there for show, and they're trying to make sure things are good. But I agree with you. You're not going to be an active, usable muscle. Right. That's because it's small enough. It needs to stay small to do the job that it does, and it does whatever job it is, and it's well. Good. It just
I didn't design it to necessarily be small.
I'm talking about that little muscle, but
okay.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at what's really required to grow the absolute maximum amount of muscle, not much. Like you need some serious heavy forces, which can be provided by latex banding. But I say latex bands, most people have an idea of like, the 5-pound rubber tube that they can buy
Right.
at Walmart, and like nobody will ever get stronger from using one of those.
Uh-huh.
And they're right. But what we're talking about is very different than that. In fact, when I do a deadlift with the X3, just with the heaviest band alone, so I'm not stacking bands up or anything, it's 615 pounds at the top
Jeez.
of my deadlift. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And I'm hitting that like 20 repetitions. So I'm getting the benefit of loading my spine, my spinal erectors, my trapezius muscles, my grip strength with that level of force. But because the force changes as I go down into the weaker range of motion, it drops.
Mm-hmm.
I can not only fatigue every range of motion individually based on diminishing range of repetitions. So I go however far into the, so I keep doing full repetitions until I can't anymore.
Right.
And then I do partials as far as I can go. And so the first partial might be 3/4, and the next one might be half. And then I might get 3 or 4 repetitions there. And then it's 1/4 repetitions, but I might be able to do 10 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's because it's
Absolute
just
exhaustion.
yeah. And so the whole time you're loading your muscles, you're loading your spine, you're loading your bones. And so it's helping that. What's the difference between using regular weights and then that, in, I guess, because you came from that the bone density research world to get into that?
Well, my best-selling book is Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. So weightlifting's wrong.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's just an incorrect read of human physiology. Now, if you're participating in the sport of weightlifting, okay, that's a thing.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
you're going to need to keep lifting weights just for the firing pattern, just for the motor skill
Right.
of
Okay.
moving that weight in that lift. So like sometimes like power lifters, like they get so upset when I say weightlifting is a waste of time. And I'm saying that in the context of developing the human body, not criticizing the sport. So
Right. Okay.
if you want to develop the human body, what you want is variable resistance. There have been 16 studies on variable resistance, and all 16 of them made weightlifting look like it was a waste of time by comparison, because when you can put heavier loads on the body where the musculature in question is stronger or is able to recruit more tissue, versus having a lower load in a weaker position. So most people listen to this podcast. I won't illustrate with my hands or anything, but think about doing a push-up.
Right.
When your nose is close to the ground, that's the hard part.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then when you're almost at full extension, that's the easy part. So you could do short repetitions, 1/4 repetitions, almost the whole day and never get tired.
Mm-hmm.
But full push-ups, how many can most people do in a set? I don't know, maybe 100.
Yeah.
And even the strongest guy will just collapse.
Right. Before they have to
You're
stop.
right around 100 repetitions.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they'll take that, 10-minute, 5-minute, 2-minute break or whatever. And then they'll be able to do more again, but not as many as they just did.
Right, but for a lot of different reasons.
Sure.
When you lift standard weights, and I'm going to quote Peter Attia here. I don't know if you know who Dr. Attia is.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So really smart guy. And he generally says his problem with weightlifting is it overloads joints and underloads muscle. That was the exact observation I made. But I saw it from a different perspective, because I could see what the maximum potential was in the strong or impact ready range of motion versus the weaker range of motion. And really, there's a 7-fold difference. So like when you're at the top of a squat, you can handle 7 times more load than you can when your legs are parallel to the ground.
Right.
So once you know that, and most people intuitively do know that, but they're not questioning what they're doing. So they're not trying to critically think about it.
Right.
But when I frame the scenario like I just did, it leaves you to think, well, if you're 7 times stronger in one place, or said differently, 7 times weaker in another place, why would you ever train with a weight? That doesn't make any sense, because you're really only going to stimulate where you're weakest. The weakest range is where you're firing the least amount of tissue by definition.
Right. Okay.
So, and also building the maximum amount of cumulative joint damage.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So
Because everything's
think of the
being
pack
just,
runs.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's when the knee's bent is when it's hurting you.
Yeah.
When you don't have to, when you're going uphill, that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going downhill, shorter steps, you're basically controlling your fall. You
Yeah.
don't hurt your knees from that.
I guess
Barely moving.
the compounding with with cartilage, meniscus, whatever, let's say on
That
the
can be a
knees.
challenge too,
Right.
because it's abrupt. It's not a controlled event.
But you, like you said, you are controlling that fall, so you can adjust the way in which you land, whether you're pushing into your heel and now you're using your muscles to help take that. But a lot of times people will, when they're lifting, they get their muscles, they're getting to that point where they're getting fatigued or whatever, and so then now they start adjusting to those joints, like you're saying. And I hadn't even thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I've had knee surgeries and stuff before, but I had to adjust the way in which I would work out, or I would do karate or something like that, and I adjust my physiology and just determining how that goes, and learning that, as opposed to keeping off of those joints and keeping off of things that are going to cause more pain, and not realizing that that blows my mind. I guess it's totally astounding that it's been there the whole time and I didn't even think about it, that you are stronger holding that, as opposed to getting down there and having your quads parallel to the ground, because it's not something you think about.
Yeah. I mean, and think about it this way, like you can pick up something heavy, hold it close to your body, and you can walk for a long ways. But if every step you took, you had to squat down to where your legs are parallel to the ground, you might not make it 2 or 3 steps.
Right.
Yeah. So also, when you take the stronger range of motion to fatigue, now we take all ranges of motion to fatigue, but there's a constant question: are you able to stimulate any growth from that? Well, you're firing the most amount of tissue where you're strongest. So is it going to stimulate more growth? Yeah, obviously. Is it the maximum? No, probably not, because there's other parts of the muscle that are more likely to fire when you're in your weaker range of motion. So you want to fatigue all ranges, and that's what we do. But if people only got stronger in the ranges that they were using, think about a sprinter. They use 7 degrees of action behind their knee.
Right. Okay.
Very little movement behind the knee. They have 180 degrees available. They only use 7 of those 180. So if they were only getting stronger in that one small range of motion, they wouldn't be able to get out of a chair.
Yeah.
They're strong in all ranges of motion. Why is that? So, they're taking the maximum amount of tissue to a very high level of fatigue when they sprint. Therefore, the growth is shown in a strength output difference in all ranges of motion. Do you,
and I guess that would go the same thing of just a like say a long distance runner, and they're running hills, or just somebody running and they go run hills. They're using more load in that, as opposed to somebody that's running on a flat surface for just miles or whatever. Right.
Sure.
Yeah. And I guess because you're pushing harder. Yeah. I would always, because I also teach karate for kids and adults. And one of the things we work on is always that explosion. You want to kind of be able to explode, off of your feet, and getting those small muscle fibers to just go quick. And people burn out quick on that, and they just say, okay, I'm done. And it's just muscle not getting used, and it's not being used. Is that correct? Yeah.
You got a lot of, like, it's not so much true of X3 use, because it's a slow and controlled raw output. There's some stabilization firing that upregulates growth hormone, but it's not going to condition you to, let's say, throw a baseball or swing a golf club, because those are skills.
Right. Yes.
Like your output, like you may be able to throw a much faster fastball after using X3, but you also got to practice pitching, because you got to be able to control that power. You can't control that power, you're not going to be a pitcher. Like here's some guys I know some guys in law enforcement who built very powerful musculature, but never really bothered with like a lot of the subduing, someone who's resisting arrest. And they just never focused on that. Like everybody did it, like in the academy, but not everybody practices that on a regular basis.
Correct.
And I've seen like really strong police officers get overpowered by, some person on PCP or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the people who are better at that skill, even if they don't have the powerful physique, they win that game.
Right.
Yeah. So you really got to have both.
Yeah. And so with X3, you're looking at a maximum amount of effort and output in a minimal amount of time, correct? You don't need to go, because there'll be guys that go to the gym for an hour, 2 hours or whatever. And they're
Right.
they're lifting weights.
Yeah. The goal in designing X3 had nothing to do with saving people time. It just so happens that the best stimulus for the most growth is brief.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like when somebody tells me their workouts 2 hours, whatever, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, I just kind of I know their workout sucks.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree.
Stimulate much growth. And, if they're big, they're probably taking some sort of performance enhancing drug or whatever. I'm like, all right. I mean, like the body doesn't need that.
Right.
You can, here's another thing. With X3, you only do one set. In fact, any adaptation that the body has, whether it be a callus, see, I got some pretty brutal calluses, a suntan. How many sets do you do in the sunlight to get a tan?
Right, you just one Saturday afternoon or whatever. Yeah,
you just go outside and if it's bright, you get a tan.
Right.
If you get too much, you get a burn. Right. So what most people are doing to their musculature by doing multiple sets is just the equivalent of a sunburn. They're just hurting themselves, creating damage. By the way, muscular damage, micro tears, is inversely related to growth. So if you damage the muscle, so the idea is you tear the muscle and then it grows back bigger.
Right.
Wrong. In fact, if you do that and you have that level of soreness and everything, guaranteed you will never grow.
Really?
So you change so that you stop the damage, because you want to fatigue the muscle. As soon as you damage it, the muscle protein synthesis goes to fix the damage and just brings you right back to where you were. There is no getting bigger at that point.
So is there so you should not be, sore where you're having a hard time walking or you're having a hard time, I can't even move my arm or whatever.
No.
It should never get to that point.
If you're iron deficient, you could get to that point. So a lot of vegans have trouble with that because they don't have iron in their diet, or enough.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's other reasons why you could be sore, but really, when you have the proper nutrition and the proper stimulus, the last 60 pounds of muscle I gained, which is since turning 40, I've never been sore, not even one day.
Well, and there's that thing where people say, are you ever sore? Are you sore all the time? Because I'm sore. People hit the gym, especially coming up, by the time this episode airs, it'll be after the first of the year. Yeah. And people, you go to the gyms or wherever and you drive past them and you see just cars upon cars in the parking lot and stuff like that. Yeah. And then people are like, oh, I'm so sore. And then they stop because they got so sore. That doesn't have to be a way of life. That there's alternatives.
It's a mistake. I mean, it's only just not knowing what the right thing is. People bombarded with misinformation all day, every day. A lot of fitness professionals really don't help, because the ones that are given some of the most attention, they're bodybuilders. Notice NFL players don't really tell you what their workout is.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of it is that's not their brand. They win games.
Right.
That's their brand.
Win games, sell shoes.
You about their workout is just they don't care at all.
Right.
The most meaningless statistics are who benches what. I don't care. If they're winning games, that's what matters.
Yeah, you hear about all the time is the bodybuilders. If you're talking about workouts, you hear about bodybuilders, weightlifters, or you hear about movie stars. The Thor workout, Captain America workout, something like that. And those guys,
all of the above, usually highly inaccurate. A lot of these guys, they remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger said he did a 2-hour workout in the morning and a 2-hour workout.
Oh, yeah.
High intensity weightlifting at night.
Yeah.
And he ate 10,000 calories a day. It's all of those things. It's dude, none of these things are possible. Like, and then later on, he admitted now his workout was more like 20 something minutes. And it was like, 5 days a week.
Right. Yeah. You see those things. You read in magazines or whatever. And you see a lot of younger guys doing this, who's reading those and seeing those things. And then they post on Instagram or wherever they post, and they get these pictures. Oh, I'm making gains and stuff. But there's not a lot to them. I knew a guy one time, and we were working some martial arts with him, and he's an active. He played ball in college, did a whole bunch of stuff, and I worked him for 1 minute fighting a guy in a padded suit. By the time he got done with that 1 minute, he was puking in the trash can. He was done. He was out of gas completely. And but this guy, he was an athlete, and he'd done all these things, and it took him a little bit to realize some of the stuff that he's done that just were no benefit to him, and I think a lot of people don't realize.
A lot of the bodybuilder powerlifter mindset is like just focused on getting bigger. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of these guys don't realize is they're just getting fatter. They're not like, they eat a lot and they're like, oh, I'm trying to put on some muscle, and so the scale weight goes up and they're proud of themselves, but they haven't even gained an ounce of muscle. They're just fat.
Right. So prior to X3 you developing that, what were you doing? Or you said that you weren't even really in that good a shape, correct?
Oh, I was lifting for 20 straight years. But I never really saw results. Didn't matter what I did. And I was eating the proper amount of protein. And I think this is most people who work out, like they go to the gym for years and years and years. And, maybe they see some changes the first couple of weeks, but really they don't see much after that. Mm-hmm. And they just keep going, thinking at some point, like everything will change, but they never grow. They never, like, if they're fat, they stay fat. If they're skinny with very little muscle, years later, they're still the same skinny guy with very little muscle.
Right. So what's the trick? And I think I know the answer to this, but coming from a doctor, it's going to be way more, I don't know, a little more gravitas to it. But what's the trick to those people who are working to try to get in better shape, either gain weight or lose weight or whatever? What do they do as opposed to going to the gym and trying to do the New Year's resolution?
You're not going to expect this answer.
Sure.
It's in the last chapter. Weightlifting is a waste of time.
Weightlifting is a waste of time. Get it?
Yeah. The biggest difference is genetic. Like you hear people like say, oh, that guy's good genetics, that guy's bad genetics. Usually the person who has a muscular physique, people just go, oh, he has good genetics. Mm-hmm. Kind of a cop out. Like, no, I have terrible genetics. And most people walk up to me and ask me, most people like this may happen. If I'm in a grocery store, this may happen 10 times when I'm in a grocery store. Somebody will come up to me and be like, are you in the NFL? Are you an MMA fighter? Like they want to know, like, why the hell do I look like this? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, I'm a scientist, but I have a fitness product and a fitness concept that is highly applicable to the broad population. Now, here's the problem with standard weightlifting. Most people, now I don't know the exact percentages because the study has not been done to determine how prevalent this genetic mutation is, but most people have a very specific tendon layout in their body. So like their pectorals, for example, the origin is on the sternum, middle of the chest. And then it'll connect, like the insertion point will be right at the top of the humerus bone. So that's your upper arm. So the top of the humerus bone, you may see that that's where the connection is. So between the mid chest and the humerus, the top of the humerus bone, the contraction of the pectoral moves the humerus bone towards the midline of the body. With some people, instead of having it connected at the top of the humerus, have it connected at the bottom.
Oh, really? Down closer to their elbow?
Closer to their elbow, the opposite end. And people with this mutation tend to have it all over their body. Now, there's two things that are really important. They have a longer lever arm inside of their body. So the entire humerus bone is like a lever when doing a bench press.
Okay.
Whereas for me, it's not a lever at all. So then on top of that, what do we know about tendinous tissue? It's elastic.
Right.
It stretches, and then with incredible fierce power, snaps right back into position. 20% when you're sprinting, 20% of the energy. That number might not be right. It might be 12%.
Okay.
I got to think about that one. But anyway, significant amount of energy is what they call recycled energy. So as you stretch your calf and do a toe strike in a sprint, so your foot's going into flexion, as it springs back,
right,
as you push off the ground, that there's a percentage of energy that is because the tendon is stretched and it just snaps back. It doesn't require your energy output at all.
Oh, okay,
so,
yeah.
Knowing about the elasticity of tendons and the different placement to create leverage is why some people who have that mutation, they start to pick up weights in high school and they just grow. 6 months or a year later, they look like they've been lifting weights for 25 years. And the rest of us don't look like shit.
Right.
And this is why most people who try and follow whatever program it is that some bodybuilder does, it's like that bodybuilder might have that mutation and they don't, and they'll do the same thing. They'll be like, I'm not getting anything out of this. And so first came the bone density research, where I realized how we have a variable capacity for output that is so different,
right,
depending on the position you're in. Then realizing some people have that mechanical leverage and elasticity built into their biomechanics. It's like, oh, there we go. That's the difference. That's why some people can lift regular weights, which is inefficient, and they end up growing anyway. So really what X3 is it's that same advantage, but it's on the outside of your body instead of the inside of your body. Right. Now you have leverage. Now you have elasticity.
Right. So that's where the whole idea of relaxing during whatever athletic competition you're doing, you got to relax through it. Contract when you need to do the thing, but then when you've done, say, hit the ball, then you need to relax your body and let your body, that's that elasticity just coming to the.
That's different. That's actually just conserving your energy. That's not the geometry of force output.
Okay.
So I'm really speaking specifically about the geometry of the force output.
Oh, so you're talking output, not directly after the output.
Right, because the output is ultimately the loading that goes through the muscle in question, which is going to determine how powerful that growth stimulus is.
Right. Okay.
So even the guy with the advantageous tendon layout, he's going to be able to lift more as a completely untrained individual, and he'll be able to grow much faster.
Right.
Because he can take that tissue to a much deeper level of fatigue. And the objective with X3 is a level of fatigue that goes even beyond that, which is why 19 NFL players have given up on weightlifting and they're just using X3 now.
Really? And they're seeing some results. Are they?
Yeah, they're in best shape of their life. And some of them, in their 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, better than they were in their 20s because they can train. So X3 allows you to train heavier, but it's a strategic way to train heavy. So you switch on more testosterone receptors, you stimulate growth faster, and because you're offloading in the weaker range of motion, you don't get the joint damage.
Oh, yeah.
That joint damage, you can keep going and keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Whereas most people who just lift regular weights, they'll grow until they've damaged their joints bad enough to where it's just too painful.
Right.
And most people experience that, especially if they don't have that mutation. They experience that very early in their lifting. So they go from having a 1 rep maximum. By the way, 1 rep maximums are stupid. Don't do them. And they don't stimulate any growth. They're just ego shit.
Right.
Like let the high school kids do that. Adults should never do a 1 rep maximum. But this is observations from back when people did 1 rep maximums all the time. You'd see a guy whose 1 rep maximum bench press was like 120 pounds. So not a strong person. And they work out for a year, and now they could do a 1 rep maximum of maybe 240, like double the output.
Right.
But at that point, they bench so much they can barely put their shirt on. Their shoulders hurt so bad. So is that person going to get to a 300-pound bench press? No.
Right.
Never.
Yeah. There's no.
Yeah, because the cumulative damage is just, they just can't do it. It's just so painful. It stops them. So what they do is they switch to machines, or they start doing limited range, or they pick some other strategy or they start doing, this is one of my favorite ones, super slow, which is super ineffective because you're training with like way lower weight. I mean, it's the dumbest cardio. It's like, and I tell people, there's not really no such thing as cardio. Cardio is just really shitty strength training that'll never make you stronger.
Right.
But it will wear out your joints. So, yeah, and I see this happening, and I've got the answer. I know exactly what they need to do to avoid these problems and be absolutely as strong, powerful, and build the physique they want. They just got to learn. They got to learn what's in that book.
Yeah. And so in addition to that, your diet is huge, correct? Diet is, and they say that 1/3 of everything is your food, your exercise, and then blah, 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 blah.
Here's what it is. People are like, so what? And you hear like how you look is going to be 80% diet and 20% exercise. Now, that implies that you can slack on one or the other, and they want to know which one they can slack on.
Right. Okay.
The truth is, both exercise and nutrition need to be 100% correct, or you won't get shit.
Yeah.
So you need to get them now. Now, how I define that 100% is very different than how many others would define it.
Okay.
You need to be able to get the maximum stimulus into the muscle. And so a large portion of the book is about how I accomplish that, developing X3, or you can accomplish it by going into a gym with chains, spans, changing the weight from the contracted position to the weaker position. You want a wide ratio of force. Now, and the reason I developed X3 was because screwing around with chains and bands and trying to hook them on stuff, and like you might spend a half an hour setting up for your bench press, which you'll only do one set of.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, with X3, it takes 1 second to set it up, and then, you got everything you need. So, but I'm not saying anybody needs to buy my product. But like about 30 pages in this is a 250-page book. About 30 pages is about that product specifically. But the concept of the product is also discussed in there, and that can be applied in multiple different ways. So like, it's like if you're training with variable resistance, you're probably going to win. If you're not training with variable resistance, you're probably not going to win. Like now that people are reading this book, we sold 150,000 copies of that book, making it a bestseller.
That's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And so the people that have read it, there's a reason that the Miami Heat gave up on weight training and they just use X3. They even endorsed the book. It's right on the back cover.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that they had done that. I didn't even. Yeah.
So it's been huge for them. Injury avoidance is really what pro athletes are most interested in, but they know they need to stay strong.
Right.
In fact, talking to a strength coach about getting their athletes stronger is almost a ridiculous conversation, because they like the number one thing the strength and conditioning coach is concerned with is not getting the athlete stronger. It's keeping them from getting injured. So
because they're getting stronger. They're stronger as it is. And they go to work out, they're going to get stronger. So
they're told, like an NFL player, if they injure themselves lifting and they can't, so they have to skip a game, their pay is docked for that game. They don't get paid for that game.
Yeah, that's not so good.
Like,
not when you're
literally, when you're in the NFL, you get paid per game you show up ready to play at. In any game that you can't play at, you will not be paid. So if you've got a, $5 million per season contract, it won't be $5 million if you skip a game.
Right.
Or if you get hurt and can't be at a game.
Yeah. See, so making sure you're not injured is the trick. So that's something that, looking at the first responder world, folks like that who they're not professional athletes necessarily,
Right.
but they should be a tactical athlete. They should be somebody who is capable of doing physical things. And so whether that's your firefighter that has to climb stairs with a whole pack on, and tools, or your SWAT operator who has to carry all this gear, those guys are the ones that, they work out, but they're not working out correctly. So they get injured and like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with this ankle thing, or I'm dealing with this back thing, and still trying to wear their stuff and taking more of a chance.
And there's no do-overs
again.
in law enforcement. Like if you kick down somebody's door and your knee is throbbing, you can't tell the suspect who's, running at you with a machete to be, hang on, man, hang on. I got a knee issue here.
Right.
Little time out. They don't do that.
Right. And so you take this chance of now you can injure yourself for life, and you lose your career. You don't get there's no, and I've talked about this before with other folks. The military has the VA, and if you get out of the military because you get hurt, you have the VA to take care of you the rest of after your life. The law enforcement and firefighters don't have that. They don't have a VA after if they get hurt and they're out of it anymore. So the trick is work out correctly so you're in shape enough to do the things, because you still got to do your other training. You got to practice your door kicking skills and other stuff like that. But you got to be, if you take care of that being physically fit first, all that stuff will come easier.
Yep.
So that's a huge thing, and that's not something that a lot of people think about. So if people want to get the X3 or they want to learn how to work out with it, I'm assuming it comes with various exercises and
everything,
programs and stuff like that.
There's a workout card, but there's a URL on the card where you can see everything in video.
And do you have programs for it? Do you have because I seem to remember looking at your website and there's like a calendar or a program or something like that you can do specific.
Yeah. It tells you what, like you it's assuming you're starting with very little experience exercising. I recommend everybody just go through that. So there's not like something that they, like a lot of people don't understand constant tension, which is a principle we apply. They don't understand diminishing range, and they wouldn't, because I came up with that term.
Okay.
So they wouldn't know what that is. So they need to watch all the videos, but it takes, 20 minutes.
Right.
And then you can become an expert on how to program.
You order it, you get it, whatever day, that night you watch all your videos and you're ready to work out by the next morning to just start hammering away. Yeah.
Yep.
And you said in conjunction with your book, weightlifting is a waste of time. With your book, you can get that and read it, and that will explain more about how to work and how to use X3 and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and it talks about nutrition also. It'll break a lot of things that you were told about nutrition. Now, you need 8 glasses of water a day. Bullshit. No study ever proved that. That was made up by Gatorade. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. How many times have you heard that stupid shit?
Yeah.
That was made up by Kellogg's to sell cereal, which when it came out in, I think like the 1930s, like cereal was a new thing. And people didn't eat breakfast back then. Breakfast might have been like a bite of toast and a sip of coffee before you walked out the door, or was nothing. And like the concept of eating first thing in the morning before you go to work was just not a thing. People did it on the weekends, but they also slept in.
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe they had a real breakfast and a light lunch, or they did like a brunch kind of thing. But people didn't eat 3 meals a day.
What's your suggestion for water intake? So it's not eight ounce glasses of water or whatever.
So ironically, it's not far for me from 8 glasses of water. I can have 6 glasses of water in a day, but I just do it based on thirst, and I only drink in a 4-hour window.
Oh, okay.
So I'm dry fasted for 20 hours a day.
Wow.
No food, no liquids, 20 hours a day.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there's a great study from 2013 in Germany where they took 10 people and they give no food or water for 5 straight days. They had better hydration after no water for 5 days.
Is that because
Then
your
they
body
did-
starts saying, okay, I've got to find water somewhere, and so it starts lubricating itself from stores inside yourself?
You are a smart guy. That's exactly what happens. It's called
Okay.
metabolic water. It starts
Okay.
pulling water out of fat cells. The
Okay.
only cells that are storage. And it makes perfect sense, right?
Uh-huh.
You dehydrate those cells enough and they destroy themselves.
Oh, okay. I
Mhm.
see.
And
So
then-
that's the same thing with intermittent fasting. What you're saying is that your food intake, that's you're not eating for a certain amount of time, and then you're obviously it's taking
Right.
from other
Yeah.
parts.
Oh,
Whatever,
and
like
it's so funny, like the caloric restriction people who
Uh-huh.
like to bash the people who promote intermittent fasting. It's like, it's largely the same mechanism. Your body only burns body fat when it is done with the digestive caloric sources.
okay.
So if you're calorie deprived, let's say you're like me, you're 240 pounds, 6 feet tall, your basal metabolic rate plus activity is 3,300 calories a day. If you're at a 2,000 calorie deficit, which is huge.
Mhm.
So you're eating 1,300 calories a day, you can spread those 1,300 calories out throughout the day and you'll have poor insulin sensitivity, which is not great, but most people have poor insulin sensitivity, which is why they get viruses so easily. But you can definitely lose body fat doing that, but you're only metabolizing the body fat when you are absent of food, or said another way, in a fasted state.
Mhm. Okay.
Like, because 1,300 calories spread out over the day will probably be like really tiny meals or slash snacks. Like, you have some calories, your body gets through them real quick, and then you go back into a fasted state.
Right.
So now I do the caloric restriction thing, but I also do the intermittent fasting.
Mhm.
Now my intermittent fasts are shorter. They're only 20 hours. I used to do 5-day fast, but with water.
Okay.
So I'm dry fasted now. Dry fasting, you get the results much faster, but you can't go as long.
Are you doing is it every single day for every day of the week, 7 days a week? Is that what,
My
or do you?
intention was to do this 7 days a week.
Uh-huh.
However, I got engaged. Yeah. So schedules are sometimes challenging when I'm told, oh, great news, we have a brunch tomorrow. And I'm like,
We're meeting these people for dinner. Oh, okay.
right.
And so food because the whole trick is,
so
I don't know.
basically weekends, like I'm
Yeah.
dry fasted 20 hours, like during the weekdays and maybe Sunday, but like Saturday, like pretty small chance I'm going to stick to that.
Yeah, because I know for me, you sit there and you look at something and I've always liked food. Being a little kid, and that's all. I was a chunky little kid, and so what I would do is I would eat when I could, and so I have to totally have it not in front of me. I have to avoid food if I want to intermittent fast or I want to fast. I have to avoid it so I can focus on what other things that I need to do.
Being distracted is so key in nutrition control. Mm-hmm. And that's why coronavirus like really hurt people when they were stuck at home. Because they're stuck at home, they got nothing to do, and they're just looking in their pantry and they're like, I could eat everything. And they did.
Right. Yeah. And because everybody would I couldn't go to the gym. That doesn't mean you can't work out. I mean, you can still do things. You should still be able to do things. And I haven't been a part of a gym in, I don't know, a long time. And I work out every day. There's you can do stuff all the time. And now if you get X3, you can definitely work out all the time and you can take it with you.
Like I'd love to do a study. I mean, the Olympic Training Center would never let me do this, but I would say, let's take a group of people who are strength athletes, same sport, divide this group in half. Half of them use the Olympic Training Center. So best equipment in the world.
Right.
Whatever they want to do. I don't care. They can work out for 2 hours a day. It doesn't matter. Then the other group just uses X3 at their house for about 10 minutes a day, 6 days a week. The X3 people will blow away the Olympic Training Center people.
And you would put money on that?
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. And so that's not something that you see too often of. And
No, I mean, like there are guys
that's cool.
who will gain more muscle, like the first 6 months. There's a group of people in particular. Like I like looking at the 6 month number. First 6 months, gaining 20 pounds of muscle mass. That's unheard of. That's unheard of for like a drug enhanced stat. Well, maybe that's normal for drug enhanced. I don't know much about that, but that's really uncommon. And so there are guys who are coming up to me and they're like, I put on 20 pounds of muscle with X3. And like, I'll be approached at like an airport or something like that. And I'm like, for some reason, I bump into my fans all the time at airports. I actually schedule myself. Like I get to the airport extra early just in case I run into somebody because they'll make me miss my flight.
Oh, wow. They just want to sit and talk.
Right. And so I try and be polite, and it's like after 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm here because I got to catch a plane. So
no, you're here to see me. You don't seem to understand.
Right,
Everybody comes to the airport just to stand around.
Right. So, yeah, what the hell was I saying?
I'm sorry. I knocked you off.
Oh,
You're talking about how people, that you can get this stuff with X3 as opposed to going to a gym. And
guys will tell me I got more out of 6 months with X3 than I did with 20 years of weightlifting before that. Yeah, I hear that story. I don't know, maybe every day, maybe every other day.
Man, that's cool. That's not something that, there's a lot of people who they won't go to a gym because it's all intimidating because there's all this different stuff. And it's something, and this is people are people and humans are humans, but guys, girls, anybody can use this, right? It's not just you have to be a college athlete or something like that. If you're
people with no exercise experience in their 60s get it, and they do phenomenal. And there's NFL players that get it and they do phenomenal.
Right. So a soccer mom in her 30s or 40s can just pick this thing up and work out, do the 10, 15 minute, 20 minute day.
And many do. Yep.
And they're going to make way more gains or difference, progression, whatever, than they would by getting up every day and going to the gym and making sure they do the same thing on the treadmill or on the elliptical or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not going to feel different because they're trying to do something. And you got these huge bodybuilder guys or these teenagers or whatever that are making all this noise, trying to show off, which totally changes the whole attitude, the mentality of the gym in which you're at.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the ego lifting.
Right. Or the girls over in the corner with their Instagramming, or they're taking photos of their tight pants in the mirror and stuff like that.
Right.
There's the people that don't want to do that. They want to actually have some kind of gain, or they want to have some kind of progression with their health and their
but fitness. Keep in mind the two groups of people you just described, they find you annoying.
That's true.
It's like this guy comes in, it's like all he wants to do is like work out.
Right.
My favorite is like the CrossFit people who like there's a great video of a dude who did a lift and then dislocated his shoulder in the process of throwing the bar against the ground, because they all have to do that. So it makes a loud noise. So everybody knows they're strong, right?
Oh, okay.
And I guess they have to do that because you'd never know somebody's strong by looking at them when they do CrossFit.
And that's what it's about too, is you have to look strong. You can't just be a good person, or you can't just know that I'm healthy. I'm going to be able to do what I need to do. And it's unfortunate because social media tells us that we have to be this, or we have to look this way. And you may not look that way, but you can be healthy and you can be strong and you can be all these things, but you don't have to look.
Well, and social media also, like I tell people, I say this less because we have a lot of pro bodybuilders that are using the product.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them bodybuilders aren't the best people to look at because you don't know what you're looking at unless you really understand that sport.
Right.
There's performance enhancing drugs in that sport. That's not a mystery, but it's a lot more prevalent than you think. I know, right?
No.
Yeah. So there's performance enhancing drugs. The other thing is they get lean, but somebody who's at 6% body fat and dehydrated looks like a skin cadaver.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they go to extreme dehydration. In fact, before So like the study I was talking about, how that people were better hydrated after not having any water. So what the bodybuilders do is they load up on water like a couple days before the show. So they overhydrate and their body's trying to dump all the water because they're like, drowning on the inside kind of thing. And I mean, they don't go to renal failure because you can actually kill yourself by drinking too much water. They don't go to that level. But they get in there and they overhydrate. And then the next few days, then they're losing all the water, but then they don't drink any. So, and then on top of that, they'll probably, this is very common, take diuretic drugs.
Just to soak them up, right?
Well, the diuretic drugs force them to urinate even more.
Right. And
so they're losing even more water.
Oh, they're looking
and so what the diuretic drugs are designed to do is take somebody who has high blood pressure and lower their blood pressure, dehydrate their blood a little bit. But when you're taking somebody who's already dehydrated and you give them a diuretic, that can kill them. And it has with bodybuilders many times. Still, you got to realize what you're looking at when you're looking at pictures of a bodybuilder. That guy looks like that for a few hours, maybe one day in a 6-month period.
For that photo shoot or that
just
magazine.
For that photo shoot
or
just
whatever.
For that
competition or whatever.
Just for that competition. Like they don't look like that every day.
Yeah.
And so I like it when people look at NFL players because they never get dehydrated. They got to perform. So that's not something they can do.
Yeah. They got to perform for half a year.
And they're tested like you wouldn't believe for performance enhancing drugs. They can't get away with anything anymore. And what do you know? They're still strong and they're still very healthy looking.
Yeah. And
those are my preferred athletes to look at. And also like, I like helping the bodybuilders because a lot of people pay attention to bodybuilding, but I prefer helping out the NFL guys because when you show what an NFL player can do, there's no funny business. There's no drugs and, they have to perform.
Right.
So there can't be any other chemical manipulation that would compromise their performance. They're not going to do that. Yeah. They want to be the best football player they can.
Yeah. And so they work on their fitness, their nutrition, and then they work on their skill to cap all that off.
Right. And really the most important thing they do is injury avoidance. So they want to train in a way where they're less likely to injure, which is why they love X3 so much.
And I think that's huge for the first responder world because the last thing we want to be is injured. We want to be
a first responder is almost exactly like an NFL player and nothing like a bodybuilder.
Right.
Like the bodybuilders, when they're dehydrated at that show, like there's use of stimulants sometimes so they can just keep from falling over. Just they're so exhausted. Like it's funny. Bodybuilders will tell you, I've never looked better than when I was at that show. I've never felt worse.
Wow. That's weird. I mean, makes a huge
difference. They look so great. They look super healthy. They look superhuman healthy, but they're not healthy at all.
But I mean, that goes to show you just because what you're looking at isn't what you're going to actually what it is. Because inside it's a dry ghost town. Their organs and everything they're craving, they're screaming for water. They need some fluids. They need some food.
Now, I will say there are some people who do it more responsibly than others. And they're typically the ones who are more successful at it than the reckless guys. And you can say that about a lot of different things. But I still tell like the regular person who just wants to get in shape, like don't spend your time staring at the physiques of bodybuilders.
Right.
Like, that should not be your goal unless you want to do that. If you want to be a bodybuilder, okay.
Right. But if you want to be an athlete,
be a good guy, if you just want to look good at the barbecue, with your shirt off, standing by the pool, so your wife gives you the thumbs up because she's proud that you look dynamite.
She's telling all her friends, that's my man over there. Yeah,
that's right. That's what you want, right? And you want your kids to look at you like you're a superhero.
Yeah.
You want your wife to catch your wife, looking at you up and down like, wow.
The other thing I think about is a lot of people, especially let's take first responders because that's a lot of my listeners, they go do stuff on their weekends, on their time off. They go, they're hiking or they're rafting down rivers or they're boating or they're doing whatever, and they're active stuff. I think of it like if you're in good shape, if you're capable of doing things, and you're fit and all that stuff. If it comes down to being able to help somebody because you're in better shape, like if somebody falls out of a boat during a rafting trip or something like that, are you going to be able to help get them into a boat, swim over there, whatever the case may be? And are you capable of doing that, or are you not because you have an injury, or because you're so sedentary in your lifestyle that you couldn't do that? There'd be two people that need rescue now, or whatever the case may be. And I tell people that all the time. Are you able to be that thing? Because we're looked at as people that need to help other people. And the same thing with, like, let's say our nurses or whatever. Are you're walking in there saying, you should really quit smoking. And then they drive out of there and they see you off the property smoking a cigarette on your break or something like that. How does that, where's the people are looking at you? So if you get in shape and you're telling people, hey, do this, or you're there to help somebody, you should be able to help them instead of not. And that's just my thing I think about often, and if you get in shape, if you're able to do it, then do it and do it right. So, yeah. But Doc, I appreciate you coming on today. It's enlightening just knowing all the stuff that you're talking about and ways in which
you can tell I'm excited about all of this.
Yeah.
It's my favorite subject. You don't have to twist my arm to talk about any of
this. And it's cool. I do want to let everybody know that, just so I can, where could people find you and your stuff?
My last name is very complicated to spell. So I create a landing page where everybody can find me. It's very easy. It's drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com.
drj.com. But they can find you. They can also find X3 and everything else on.
Yeah, you click on the superior exercise link that brings you to X3, superior nutrition, brings you to Fortagen. That's the only supplement I take. It's a highly refined bacterial fermentation protein that is 5 times more usable by the body than whey protein. So it's incredibly inexpensive, super powerful. And then there's a link to OsteoStrong there, as well as the book. And
people can get the book on Amazon too if they wanted to look there, right?
Oh yeah, it actually takes you to Amazon.
Does it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So find a book, and that is Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. Get it? It's a red book, and there's a muscly dude on the front. So if you're trying to figure out, and I'm going to put, I'll put links when I post this on social media. So there'll be links to all your stuff, and see if we can get a picture of the book on there as well, and so people know what they're looking for. So that would be perfectly cool. So, hey, just for everybody else, that if you want to talk to us at the What's a Hero podcast, you can get a hold of us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to our website, the What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com, and you can get you'll see every prior episode we've had and links to all podcast platforms in which you can go there. And with that, you can download all the episodes that you want to download and have them at the ready. So if you don't have service, you decide that you're going to go up in the mountains and you're going to go work out with your X3, you can pop in the What's a Hero podcast and listen to us, download it, and it's free. They're all free. So go do it, enjoy it. Plus, Dr. J has been on a ton of other podcasts too, all these other folks. And so he's got a ton of information out there. Read his stuff. He's a pretty smart guy. If he's a fairly good looking fellow, I'm guessing his fiance thinks so. And it's
only her opinion that counts. I don't need anybody else's.
That's right. So don't worry about how he looks. Just buy his stuff, read his stuff, and learn from him, because he's got a ton of information that's just usable. So.
Sure. If anybody has a burning desire to follow me, I suggest Instagram. I create more content for Instagram than anything else. I prefer the platform. I'm always on the move, so it's always easy to post on Instagram.
I agree. It's a cool platform. I like it myself. So, do you have any final thoughts for everybody? If you can have one little final thing, what would you what would you like to tell everybody?
It's easy to fall into thinking the things that you've been taught were right. And I know I'm breaking the paradigm on a lot of different stuff. nutrition and exercise. Fitness is the most failed human endeavor. Like, depending on how you define what fit is, I would say maybe, 1 in 100,000 people are how most of us would define fit, which is why everybody that I know who has a defined six-pack has a supplement contract also. That's how rare it is. And so it shouldn't be. Like, everybody, if you look at the cover of my book, every male should look like that. And I didn't go through any risk to get that. Like, I did a couple years of training with X3. And like I said, I put on 60 pounds of muscle. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm 45 years old. Like, if you saw me at like, whatever, 25 or 30 or 35, you hardly believe it's the same person.
Really?
Like, I have the same face, but like my physique is completely different.
Yeah. And usually people start saying, at 40, I change and things just start going downhill. I get the stomach and I get the love handles and blah, blah, blah. And you're done at 40.
I'm just kidding. I'm like better and better and better all the time.
Right. That's so cool. That's so cool. And it's X3 and fit and nutrition and just knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you can learn from it. You can buy his book and read it and you'll learn it. So, that's great. So I appreciate you coming on. This is so informative. So much information. I've got all these questions that are probably burning in my head but it's like overload. So I've got to get the book, I've got to read the book, and I've got to go work out with an X3 just so I can know what I'm doing. So,
okay.
So, those of you guys listening, I want to thank, all our nurses out there, our teachers, those people that serve other people, our firefighters, EMTs, and our police officers. You guys out there on the front line, making sure that we can live in the world that we live in, the United States, where we have this opportunity to do things and become better and help become stronger to serve other people and protect other people. And, it's a rare thing. And those of you guys, those vets, those military guys that are out on the front line doing that, keeping our country what it is, I appreciate you guys. And don't let all this garbage saying that you can be, that you guys are less or whatever. Be fighter ready, be that warrior ready, and do the things that it takes to get in shape, to be stronger mentally and physically, and prepare yourself to do the job that you need to do. So Dr. J's way of doing things is one way you can do it, and it's easily accessible, and he's accessible too. If you see him, he'll talk to you. But don't expect that he's now your best friend. Come on, use a brain.
Ken and I talked a little bit before the podcast about how many people like want to email me directly. It's just like, yeah, I got a couple
he's busy. He's got stuff. He's got another book to write at some point, I'm sure. So he's doing research. That's right. Yeah. So, awesome. But anyways, you guys, thank you so much for being out there doing it. Dr. J, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been nothing but a pleasure. And your whole team, give them a high five for me. All right. And Merry Christmas, because it is before Christmas that we're burning this. So, So for Dr. John Jaquish, I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.